Story 1. The doll comes from hell. In a quiet suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, a high school student named Max and his friend Jay made a shocking discovery. It all started on a stormy Saturday afternoon when they decided to play in Max's basement. The air smelled of rain, and the old house creaked under the weight of the storm. Max's sister's old doll, a lifelike toy that used to walk on all fours while running on batteries, lay strangely in the middle of the basement. Max frowned. "That's weird. I haven't seen that doll in years, and it doesn't even have batteries," he muttered, tossing it carelessly into a corner. A few hours later, they heard a slight shuffling sound. Jay's eyes widened in horror as he pointed down the dark hallway. The doll, moving on its own, limped toward them, its eyes blinking mechanically. "Max, is this a joke?" Jay whispered, his voice shaking. Max's heart pounded. "No, that can't be. This thing can't move without batteries." They both watched in horror as the doll crawled, its plastic limbs scraping against the wooden floor. Suddenly, the doll disappeared. They searched the basement and found it perched on a high bookshelf, grinning down at them with cold, lifeless eyes. Panic set in, and they ran to Max's mother. "Mom, the doll, it's moving on its own." Max screamed. His mother, a devout woman, paled. She took the doll outside, but prayed before burning it. "Some things are better left alone," she whispered, her eyes darting around as if expecting the doll to return. Story 2. The Haunted Theater. In the heart of New Orleans, Louisiana, nestled among historic buildings and bustling streets, lies an old theater with a dark past. The Grand Arcadia Theater, known for its lavish decor and legendary performances, harbors a chilling secret that few dare admit. Catherine, a young actress desperate for success in the city, lands a role in a local play at the Grand Arcadia. Excitement and trepidation mix as she enters the theater for rehearsals. As soon as she steps on stage, a chill winds down her spine. The air becomes heavy, with unseen eyes following her every move. During late-night rehearsals, strange things begin to happen. Props move by themselves, lights flicker for no apparent reason, and whispers echo through the empty hallways. At first, Catherine dismisses them as the old theater's anxiety and quirks. One evening, while practicing her monologue on stage, Catherine caught a glimpse of a figure in the balcony. It appeared and disappeared in a split second, sending a shiver down her spine. "Is anyone there?" she called out, her voice echoing through the empty theater. There was no response. The figure disappeared into the darkness, leaving Catherine uneasy. That night, as she prepared to leave, she heard footsteps following her down the winding hallway. Each step echoed louder than the last, as if someone or something was walking behind her. She quickened her pace, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The footsteps ran parallel to hers, getting closer with each passing moment. Just as she reached the exit, a cold hand touched her shoulder, sending a shiver down her spine. Catherine turned, but no one was there. Frightened, she ran out of the theater, vowing never to return. The next day, she learns of the theater's dark history, a tragedy that claimed the lives of several performers in a fire decades ago. It is said that their restless spirits still haunt the Grand Arcadia, seeking comfort or revenge. To this day, Catherine refuses to set foot near the theater. The chilling encounter with the unseen presence still haunts her dreams, a reminder of the thin veil between life and death in the heart of New Orleans. Story 3. The house is cursed. In the remote woods of Maine, the family cabin stands as a testament to its dark past. Locals whisper that the place is cursed, a place where spirits still linger. One summer, Jenny and her friend Liz decide to face their fears and stay there. The cabin is old and rotten, creaking under their weight as they enter. "Are you sure about this?" Liz asks, her voice trembling. Jenny nods. "We'll be fine. It's just old stories." That night, as they roast marshmallows, a cold wind blows through the cabin, extinguishing their fire. They go inside, only to hear footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. "Did you hear that?" Jenny whispers. Liz nods, her face pale. "Let's check." They walked into the living room, where the furniture had been rearranged. "Who did this?" Liz's voice shook with fear. Jenny's heart was pounding. "There's no one. We're all alone." Suddenly, a loud crash came from the kitchen. They ran in and saw the table overturned, the dishes smashed on the floor. "We need to leave," Liz said, her voice shaking. The final straw came when they heard a low growl from the bedroom. They opened the door and saw their bags ripped open, their clothes strewn everywhere, the shadow of horror passing them quickly. "This is it. We have to get out of here." Years later, Jenny's family sold it, but she never forgot the fear she felt that night. New owners, unaware of its dark history, have moved in, and Jenny can only hope they won't experience the same horrors. Story 4. The apartment is horrifying. In a dilapidated apartment building in Detroit, Michigan, Sarah and her grandmother, Miriam, sensed something was terribly wrong. They had just moved in, and from the first night, the air was thick with fear. The apartment was small, the wallpaper peeling, and the flickering lights cast strange shadows. One evening, as they were unpacking, their dog Max began growling, a deep, menacing growl that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. "What's wrong, kid?" she asked, but Max only whined and retreated under the sofa. Miriam, a superstitious woman, looked concerned. "There's something here, Sarah. Something that doesn't want us here," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Sarah smiled sheepishly. "Come on, Grandma. It's just an old apartment." But the feeling of being watched grew stronger. One night, Sarah awoke to whispering. She turned on the light, but the room was empty. The whispering stopped, replaced by the sound of scratching on the walls. "Grandma, can you hear that?" she called, her voice trembling. Miriam appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "We need to leave," she said firmly. The next morning, they packed up and moved. Years later, Sarah drove past the old apartment, now a renovated house. She wondered if the new residents had ever felt as scared as she had. Story 5. Darkness in the Passage. In the small town of Salem, Oregon, Emily works the night shift at a local grocery store. The store is old and dimly lit and has a reputation for being haunted. On her first day, she is assigned to aisles 8 and 9. It is quiet that night, and the only other worker, Tom, works in aisle 10. The store is eerily quiet, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. As Emily is stacking shelves, a dark figure passes her, heading toward the dead end of the store. "Tom, did you see that?" she calls out, but there is no answer. She shrugs it off as her imagination. A few hours later, strange things begin to happen. She and Tom hear footsteps echoing through the empty aisles. They turn around just in time to see a loaf of bread fly off the shelf and land a few feet away. "What was that?" Tom muttered, his face pale. Emily's heart raced. "Let's check the security footage," she suggested. They rewound the tape only to see a minute of static before the bread incident. The eerie silence was broken by the rustling of a plastic bag. They turned only to see it moving on its own. One night, when the power went out, Emily found herself alone in aisle 16. The store was pitch black, the only light coming from her flashlight. She heard breathing, slow, labored breathing, coming from the space beside her. She turned, but there was nothing there. "Tom, come here," she shouted, her voice shaking. Tom arrived just as a blurry figure disappeared into the darkness. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. They spent the rest of the night in the break room, too scared to continue their shift.